The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, and it changed everything. Daniel Reyes sat in his small office at the United Earth Diplomatic Corps building in Geneva. He was drinking his third cup of coffee and reading through boring reports when his computer made a sound he had never heard before. It was the alert for an alien transmission. He opened the file and read it 3 times before he believed it was real. The Galactic Concord, a group of 12 powerful alien species, was inviting humanity to attend the Centennial Peace Summit. This meeting happened only once every 100 years. It was the most important gathering in the known galaxy, and they wanted humans to come. Daniel was 52 years old. He had gray hair at his temples and calm brown eyes that had seen both war and peace. Before becoming a diplomat, he had served as a Marine for 15 years. He had fought in 3 conflicts and earned medals he kept in a drawer. But he had grown tired of fighting. He wanted to build bridges instead of burning them. His aide, Katie Marsh, walked into his office with more coffee. She was young, only 28, with red hair and a sharp mind. She read the message over his shoulder and let out a low whistle. "That's unexpected," she said. "Very," Daniel agreed. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 12 years ago. They had made first contact with the Galactic Concord just 8 years after that. In the grand scale of the galaxy, humans were babies. They were new. They were nobody. And yet, here was an invitation to the most important meeting in the universe. "It's probably just a formality," Katie said. "They want to look at us, see what we are, remind us that we're small." Daniel nodded slowly. "Probably. But we still have to go." He spent the next week assembling his team. He chose carefully, picking people he trusted completely. Dr. Nathan Cole was his first choice. Nathan was an exobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life. He was 40 years old, thin and tall, with glasses that he was always pushing up his nose. He had a gentle way of speaking and a brilliant mind. He knew more about alien species than anyone else on Earth. Commander Lisa Grant came next. She was the head of security for the mission. Lisa was 35, with short black hair and muscles that showed she spent a lot of time in the gym. She had been a soldier before joining the diplomatic corps. She didn't smile much, but when she did, it meant she trusted you. The last member was Ryan Torres, a cultural attaché. Ryan was the youngest at 25. He had dark curly hair and an easy smile. His job was to help the team understand alien customs and avoid giving offense. He had studied every known species in the Concord and could recite their histories from memory. Together, the 4 of them boarded the diplomatic vessel Endurance and began the 3-week journey to Velethos Prime, the neutral world where the summit would be held. The journey was quiet. Daniel spent most of his time reading everything he could about the species they would meet. There was so much to learn. The Veloxi were the hosts. They were tall beings that looked like insects, with shiny black shells and multiple arms. They were known for being polite and organized. Their world, Velethos Prime, had been neutral territory for thousands of years. The Cathari were the oldest species in the Concord. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. They had 4 eyes and skin that changed color with their moods. They rarely spoke, but when they did, everyone listened. The Draxians were warriors. They came from a harsh world of volcanoes and storms. They had thick gray skin and bodies built for combat. They respected strength above all else and had little patience for weakness. There were 9 other species, each with their own customs and histories. Daniel tried to memorize everything, but it felt impossible. Humanity knew so little about the galaxy. When the Endurance finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Velethos Prime, Daniel stood at the viewing window and stared. The planet was beautiful. It had rings of silver dust that caught the light of its twin suns. The surface was covered in forests of blue and purple trees, and in orbit around the planet were hundreds of ships from dozens of species. "It's incredible," Katie whispered beside him. Daniel could only nod. They docked at the main station and were met by a Veloxi official. The alien towered over them, easily 8 feet tall. Its shell gleamed under the lights, and its voice came out as a series of clicks that the translator turned into smooth English. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," the Veloxi said. "We are pleased that you accepted our invitation. You will be given quarters in the outer ring of the summit hall." Daniel noticed the slight pause before outer ring, but said nothing. He smiled politely and thanked the official for the warm welcome. As they walked through the station, Daniel saw aliens of every shape and size. Some floated in the air, some walked on many legs, some had no legs at all and moved like flowing water. The air was filled with strange sounds and stranger smells. Lisa walked close to Daniel, her eyes scanning every corner. "The outer ring," she said quietly. "That's where they put species that don't matter." "I know," Daniel replied, keeping his voice low. Nathan was busy taking notes on his small tablet, his eyes wide with wonder. "This is amazing," he kept saying. "Simply amazing." Ryan walked beside him, pointing out different species and whispering their names. "Those are the Morthani. They can feel emotions. Don't think anything too strongly around them. And those tall ones with the silver skin are the Thessic traders. Very wealthy, very proud." Their quarters were small, but clean. 4 rooms connected by a central living area. The furniture was designed for bodies very different from human ones, but they made do. That night, Daniel gathered his team in the central room. "Listen carefully," he said. "We are here as observers. We smile, we nod, we learn. We do not cause trouble. We do not draw attention to ourselves. The goal is to show the galaxy that humanity is peaceful, civilized, and no threat to anyone." His team nodded in agreement. Daniel looked out the window at the alien ships floating in the darkness of space. He felt small, like an ant at a gathering of giants. "Just be on your best behavior," he said. What could possibly go wrong? He would think about those words many times in the days to come. The first 3 days of the summit were incredibly boring. Daniel sat through meeting after meeting, listening to speeches about trade routes and territorial borders. The translator in his ear turned alien languages into English, but the words were dry and lifeless. Numbers and percentages, agreements and disagreements, politics that had been going on for thousands of years before humanity even existed. The humans were mostly ignored. Sometimes a delegate would glance at them with curiosity, the way someone might look at an unusual insect. But no one spoke to them directly. No one asked for their opinion. They were observers, nothing more. Katie sat beside Daniel during the long sessions, taking careful notes. She wrote down names and faces, trying to understand the complex web of alliances and rivalries that held the Concord together. "The Draxians don't like the Cathari," she whispered to Daniel during a break. "Something about a war 3,000 years ago. And the Veloxi are neutral in everything, which is why they host." Daniel nodded, filing the information away. Every piece of knowledge might be useful someday. On the 4th night, something unexpected happened. Ambassador Thessic, the Veloxi who had greeted them when they arrived, sent a message to their quarters. It was an invitation to a private dinner. "Is this normal?" Lisa asked, her eyes narrow with suspicion. Nathan checked his records. "It's a courtesy. Thessic probably wants to examine us more closely. The Veloxi are scholars." They study new species the way we might study a new type of flower. Daniel decided to accept. Refusing would be rude, and rudeness was something they could not afford. That evening, Daniel, Katie, Nathan, and Lisa walked to the private dining hall. Ryan stayed behind to analyze data from the day's sessions. The hall was small by Summit standards, with a long table of smooth black stone. Blue lights floated in the air, casting soft shadows. They were not alone. Thesic sat at the head of the table, his insect-like body folded carefully into a chair designed for his shape. But there were others, too. A Kethari elder sat near the middle, ancient and still, his 4 eyes watching everything. His skin was a pale blue that shifted to purple when he breathed. Across from him sat a Draxian warlord. This one was massive, even for his species. His gray skin was covered in old scars, and his yellow eyes burned with fierce intelligence. His name, Daniel learned later, was Gorath. 6 other species had sent representatives. Daniel recognized the silvery Thesic traders, the floating gas beings called the Nora, and the small furry creatures known as the Kelix. The others were new to him. Thesic welcomed them with clicking sounds that the translator turned into polite words. Thank you all for attending. Tonight we share food and conversation. Tonight we learn about each other. The food was strange. Some dishes moved on their own. Others glowed faintly. Daniel ate carefully, choosing items that Nathan quietly confirmed were safe for human biology. The taste was unusual, but not unpleasant. Conversation flowed around the table. The delegates discussed philosophy and history. The Kethari elder spoke about stars that had died millions of years ago. Gorath talked about battles and honor. The Nora made sounds like music that the translator struggled to interpret. Daniel mostly listened, adding a comment here and there when it seemed appropriate. He was careful and polite, just as he had planned. Then Thesic told a story. It was a tale from Veloxi history about a young explorer who had made a foolish mistake and accidentally discovered a new element. The way Thesic told it, with dramatic pauses and clicking sounds that might have been their version of humor, was genuinely funny. Daniel laughed. It happened before he could stop it. A real laugh, full and warm, that came from his chest. His mouth opened wide, showing his teeth. The sound filled the small room, and then there was silence. Complete, total silence. Daniel stopped laughing and looked around. Every alien in the room was staring at him. The Kethari elder's skin had turned a dark shade of red. His 4 eyes were wide. The Kelix had frozen mid-bite, their small bodies trembling. Even Gorath, the Draxian warlord who feared nothing, had his hand on his blade. "Did I do something wrong?" Daniel asked carefully. Katie was already checking her tablet, her face pale. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh no, no, no." Nathan understood first. His voice shook as he explained. "The translator. It couldn't convert your laughter. It just broadcast the raw sound. And, to most species here, showing teeth is a threat display, a challenge. You just—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Daniel had just made what the entire room interpreted as an aggressive war cry directed at the 12 most powerful beings in the Galactic Concord, while eating dinner, while being a guest. Thesic's voice was very careful when he spoke. "Ambassador Reyes, your display was unexpected." Daniel tried to explain. "I apologize. In human culture, that sound is called laughter. It means we are happy. It's a sign of joy, not threat. I meant no offense." The Kethari elder tilted his ancient head. His skin slowly shifted from red back to blue, but his eyes remained wary. "Humans make the sounds of war when they feel joy." "It's not a sound of war," Daniel said quickly. "It's just We open our mouths when we're happy. We make noise. It's completely harmless. Gorath leaned forward, his massive body casting a shadow across the table. Your body prepared for combat. I saw it. Your heart rate increased, your muscles tensed, you were ready to fight, and then you returned to eating as if nothing had happened. He paused, studying Daniel with new interest. What kind of species does this? Daniel had no answer for that. The dinner ended shortly after. Polite words were exchanged, but the warmth was gone. The other delegates left quickly, casting glances back at the human team. As they walked back to their quarters, Katie checked her messages. Her face grew more pale with every step. The recording of the dinner is spreading through the summit, she said. Everyone is talking about it. They're calling it the Human Threat Display. Some species are requesting additional security. The Cathari delegation has moved to a different section of the station. Lisa shook her head slowly. We've been here 4 days, and we've already become a security concern. Daniel stopped walking and closed his eyes. He could feel a headache forming behind his temples. All I did was laugh, he said quietly. I laughed at a joke. Nathan put a gentle hand on his shoulder. I know, but to them, you did something very different. And I don't think we can fix this with words alone. They returned to their quarters in silence. Daniel stayed up late, writing a formal apology to Thesic and the other dinner guests. He explained human laughter in careful detail. He attached scientific papers and cultural studies. He did everything he could think of to make things right. The response came the next morning. It was short and formal. Your explanation has been noted. We will continue to observe. Daniel read those words and felt something cold settle in his stomach. They would continue to observe, like scientists watching a dangerous animal in a cage. He had come to the summit to show that humanity was peaceful and friendly. He was beginning to think he had done the exact opposite. By the next morning, the situation had become much worse. Daniel woke early and checked his messages. There were hundreds of them. Requests for interviews, questions from alien journalists, formal complaints from 3 different delegations, and one very worrying message from the summit's Security Council. They want to meet with us, Daniel told his team over breakfast. They have concerns about human behavior. Katie looked exhausted. She had been up all night monitoring communications across the station. It's everywhere, she said. Every species is talking about what happened. The recording of your laugh has been analyzed by dozens of experts. They're treating it like evidence of a crime. Ryan had finally joined them, carrying a stack of printed documents. His usual smile was gone, replaced by a worried frown. I've been reading their analysis reports. It's bad. Really bad. He spread the documents on the table. Each one contained detailed studies of Daniel's laugh, broken down into data and graphs that made no sense to human eyes. The Morthani did an emotional reading, Ryan explained. They're empaths. They can feel what other beings feel. During your laugh, they detected elevated heart rate, adrenaline release, and something they describe as joyful aggression. To them, you felt like a soldier entering battle. Daniel rubbed his forehead. But I was just enjoying a joke. They don't understand that, Ryan continued. And it gets worse. The Veloxy analyzed the sound of your laugh. Human laughter occurs at a frequency that triggers fear responses in 60% of galactic species. It's a biological reaction. They can't help being scared. It's programmed into their brains. Lisa had been quiet, but now she spoke. So what you're saying is that when humans laugh, most aliens feel instinctive terror? Ryan nodded slowly. Basically, yes. Nathan took off his glasses and cleaned them with his shirt, a habit he had when he was nervous. This is a problem. Humans laugh all the time. We laugh when we're happy. We laugh when we're nervous. We laugh when we're uncomfortable. Sometimes we laugh at funerals. How do we explain that? We try, Daniel said firmly. We do our best to make them understand. The meeting with the Security Council was scheduled for midday. Daniel prepared carefully, rehearsing what he would say. He wanted to be calm and reasonable. He wanted to show them that humans were not a threat. The council chamber was large and filled with representatives from every major species. Daniel stood at a podium in the center, feeling very small and very alone. His team sat behind him, offering silent support. He began by apologizing again for the incident at dinner. He explained human biology in simple terms. He described how laughter evolved as a social bonding mechanism. He showed them pictures of humans laughing at weddings and parties. He played recordings of babies laughing, which he thought might seem less threatening. He was wrong. The Kellex representative stood up in the middle of his presentation. Her small, furry body was shaking. Even your offspring make this sound? They are born with the ability to threaten? Daniel tried to explain that baby laughter was innocent and harmless. The Kellex was not convinced. Then Commander Grant made things worse. She had been sitting quietly, but the long meeting had made her tired. Without thinking, she yawned. Her mouth opened wide, showing all of her teeth. The translator, struggling to interpret the sound, labeled it as a secondary threat display. Several delegates left the room immediately. Daniel motioned for Lisa to stay still, but the damage was done. Now the aliens had seen 2 different human threat displays in a single day. Trying to salvage the situation, Nathan stood up to offer a scientific perspective. He wanted to show that humans were intelligent and rational beings who could be reasoned with. He began describing human evolutionary history. Humans evolved on a planet with many predators, he said. We survived by hunting in groups. We developed what is called persistence hunting. We would chase our prey for hours, sometimes days, until they collapsed from exhaustion. Our bodies are designed for endurance. The room grew very quiet. Nathan continued, not realizing the effect his words were having. We also survived multiple ice ages. We lived through volcanic winters and asteroid impacts. We developed agriculture and built cities and created technology. Humans are very adaptable. The Kethari elder, who had been watching from a corner, stood and walked toward the door. His 4 eyes fixed on Nathan for a moment. You chase your prey until they die from exhaustion, he said, slowly. You survived events that ended other species. You display threats while eating. He paused at the door. I have seen enough. He left the chamber. His entire delegation followed him minutes later. They departed the station that evening and returned to their home world. Daniel's presentation was not going well. Ryan tried to help by demonstrating human body language. He showed them a smile, which they found concerning. He showed them a thumbs up, which meant nothing to species without thumbs. He made direct eye contact to show honesty, and 3 species reported feeling like they were being targeted by a predator. By the end of the meeting, the Security Council had voted to increase patrols near the human quarters. They also extended the summit by 3 days. The official reason was to discuss new business. The real reason, Daniel knew, was to keep watching the humans. That evening, Daniel sat alone in his quarters, staring out the window at the stars. Katie brought him tea, but he barely noticed. Everything we do makes it worse, he said quietly. We smile, and they see weapons. We laugh, and they hear war cries. We try to explain ourselves, and we sound like monsters from their nightmares. Katie sat down beside him. They just don't understand us yet. Maybe with time. Time might not help, Daniel replied. Some fears are too deep to overcome with words. There was a knock at the door. Lisa opened it and found a Draxian messenger standing in the hallway. He was large and fierce, with scars across his face. "Ambassador Reyes," the messenger said, "Warlord Gorath sends his greetings. He wishes you to know that he is not afraid of humans. He finds your species interesting." Daniel wasn't sure if that was good or bad. "He also wishes to invite you to a contest," the messenger continued. "The trial of endurance, a test of strength and will. He believes you might be worthy." Daniel felt his stomach drop. He knew about the trial of endurance. It was a brutal test where two participants endured increasing levels of pain until one gave up. No species had ever matched a Draxian in this contest. "Tell Warlord Gorath that I am honored by his attention," Daniel said carefully. "But I must respectfully decline." The messenger smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "He said you would say that. He also said to tell you that he has announced the trial to the entire summit. It will take place in 2 days. Declining now would be seen as weakness," Daniel finished. The messenger nodded and left. Daniel closed the door and leaned against it. His team looked at him with worried eyes. "Well," he said with a tired laugh, "I guess we're not keeping a low profile anymore." Nobody else laughed. After the past few days, they weren't sure they should. The trial of endurance was set to take place in the central arena of the summit station. It was the largest open space on Valathos Prime, designed to hold thousands of spectators. And it would be full. Daniel spent the day before the trial preparing. Nathan ran medical scans to make sure his body could handle the stress. Lisa taught him breathing techniques used by soldiers to manage pain. Katie researched every record of the trial she could find, looking for any advantage. Ryan sat with Daniel in the evening and shared what he had learned about Gorath. "He's one of the most famous warriors in the Draxian Empire," Ryan said. "He's completed the trial of endurance 43 times. He's never lost. Not once. His species has 2 hearts and a nervous system that filters pain differently than ours. They can take damage that would kill most beings." Daniel listened quietly. "So, my chances are not good." "Your chances are terrible," Ryan admitted, "but there's something else. Draxians respect endurance more than victory. If you can last long enough, if you can impress Gorath, he might call the trial a draw. That would save face for everyone." "How long is long enough?" Ryan looked at his notes. "The longest any non-Draxian has lasted is 47 minutes. A Veloxi soldier. He was considered a hero for generations after." Daniel nodded slowly. 47 minutes. I can try for that." The morning of the trial arrived too quickly. Daniel put on a simple gray uniform and walked with his team to the arena. The hallways were crowded with aliens of every species, all moving in the same direction. They stared at Daniel as he passed, some with fear, some with curiosity, some with something that might have been respect. The arena was massive. Seats rose in circles around a central platform where the trial would take place. Screens floated in the air, showing the platform from every angle. Daniel estimated there were at least 10,000 spectators. Maybe more. Gorath was already waiting on the platform. He stood in the center, his massive gray body covered in ritual scars. His yellow eyes found Daniel immediately. "Human," he called out, his voice booming across the arena. "You came. I was not certain you would." Daniel climbed the steps to the platform. His legs felt steady, but his heart was pounding. "I accepted your challenge. I keep my word." Gorath nodded with approval. "Good. Words matter. Honor matters. Let us see what else matters to your species." A Veloxi official explained the rules. Both participants would enter a sealed chamber in the center of the platform. The chamber would subject them to increasing levels of physical stress, temperature changes, pressure, electrical impulses designed to stimulate pain receptors. The first one to yield would lose. There was no time limit. Daniel looked at the chamber. It was made of clear material so everyone could watch what happened inside. There would be no hiding his pain. "Any last words before we begin?" Gorath asked. Daniel thought for a moment. "May the best one win." Gorath laughed. It was a harsh sound, like rocks grinding together. "You are small and soft and fragile, but I like you, human. I hope you last long enough to earn a warrior's respect." They entered the chamber. The door sealed behind them, and the trial began. The first phase was cold. The temperature dropped rapidly until frost formed on Daniel's eyebrows. He shivered uncontrollably, but kept his face calm. Gorath stood still, apparently unbothered. After 30 minutes, the cold was replaced by heat. The air became thick and burning. Daniel felt sweat pour down his face. His skin turned red. Still, he stood. At the 1-hour mark, the electrical pulses started. They came in waves, each one stronger than the last. Daniel felt his muscles seize and cramp. The pain was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It felt like being struck by lightning over and over. In the audience, Katie gripped Ryan's arm. "How is he still standing?" Nathan was monitoring Daniel's vitals on a small device. "His heart rate is dangerously high. His cortisol levels are through the roof. He should have collapsed by now." But Daniel did not collapse. He stood there, hands clenched into fists, face twisted with effort. And he endured. Gorath was no longer smiling. The Draxian warlord was sweating, something his species rarely did. His two hearts were working hard to keep his body functioning under the stress. He had expected the human to fall in minutes. An hour had passed, and the human was still standing. "Why do you not yield?" Gorath demanded, his voice strained. Daniel looked at him through pain-clouded eyes. "I told you. I keep my word." The second hour was worse. The pulses grew stronger. The heat became almost unbearable. Daniel's vision blurred. He thought about his team waiting outside. He thought about Earth and everyone counting on him. He thought about the aliens watching, waiting to see humanity fail. He did not yield. Gorath's breathing was heavy now. His gray skin had turned pale. The medical observers outside the chamber were sending urgent warnings. Both participants were approaching dangerous limits. At the 3-hour mark, Gorath spoke again. "You are dying in there. I can see it. Your body cannot take much more. Why do you continue?" Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. "Because giving up is not an option. Everyone has limits, human." Daniel looked at the warlord with something that might have been a smile. "Maybe, but I haven't found mine yet." The 4th hour began. The chamber's systems increased to maximum intensity. Daniel felt like his entire body was on fire. He could barely see. He could barely think. But he could still stand. And so he did. Then Gorath fell. It happened suddenly. One moment the Draxian warlord was standing tall, and the next he was on his knees. His secondary hearts had given out under the strain. His body, pushed beyond even its impressive limits, had finally failed. The chamber door burst open. Medical teams rushed in from both sides. They surrounded Gorath, working quickly to stabilize his condition. He would survive, but only barely. Daniel walked out of the chamber under his own power. Katie ran to him with a glass of water. He took it with trembling hands and drank deeply. His whole body ached. His vision was still blurred. But he was standing. The arena was completely silent. 10,000 aliens stared at the human who had just done the impossible. Daniel handed the empty glass back to Katie. "Thanks," he said quietly. When does the next session of the summit begin? Katie stared at him. You just outlasted a Draxian warlord in a trial that has never been won by any species, and you're asking about the schedule? Daniel shrugged. It hurt to shrug, but he did it anyway. We came here to attend a summit. That's what we're going to do. He walked off the platform, moving slowly but steadily. His team followed behind him. In the stands, the watching delegates did not move or speak. Some of them had recording devices that had overheated from constant use. The silence lasted until Daniel left the arena. Then, very slowly, the whispers began. They spread through the station like fire. The human had won. The human had endured. The human had asked about meeting schedules while still recovering from one of the most brutal tests in galactic history. Something had changed. The aliens could all feel it. They just didn't know what it meant yet. The summit should have ended 3 days ago. Instead, it continued for another week. Every delegation wanted to stay. Every species wanted to watch the humans. Daniel attended every session, despite his injuries. He walked with a slight limp and his hands still trembled sometimes, but he was there. He sat in his usual seat in the observers section and took careful notes, just as he had from the beginning. But things were different now. The other delegates didn't ignore him anymore. They stared at him constantly. When he moved, their eyes followed. When he spoke, they listened to every word. When he laughed, and he was very careful not to laugh, the security teams went on high alert. Katie monitored the communications flowing between delegations. What she found was alarming. They're building a dossier on humanity, she told Daniel one evening. Every intelligence service in the Concord is contributing. They're gathering everything they can find about our species. Daniel wasn't surprised. What are they saying? Katie read from her notes, her voice tight with worry. They say we evolved on a world we classify as mostly harmless, despite the fact that it has earthquakes, hurricanes, active volcanoes, venomous animals, and extreme temperature swings. They find this concerning. Nathan leaned forward. Why would that concern them? Because to them, a mostly harmless world would be a paradise with perfect weather and no dangers at all. They think we're being modest or hiding something. Katie continued reading. They've also discovered that humans consume capsaicin for pleasure. Capsaicin? Lisa asked. Spicy food, Nathan explained. Chili peppers. Capsaicin is technically a chemical irritant. It causes pain. Katie nodded. They describe it as humans deliberately eating a chemical weapon because we enjoy the sensation. She paused. They find this very concerning. The report went on. The aliens had learned that humans kept predators as companions. Dogs, cats, and other animals that could kill were allowed to live in human homes and sleep in human beds. They had learned that humans invented nuclear weapons, used them on themselves, and then built even more powerful ones. They had learned that humans explored the deepest parts of their oceans and climbed their highest mountains for no reason other than curiosity. But the most disturbing finding, according to the report, was something else entirely. They've discovered that humans form emotional bonds with inanimate objects, Katie said quietly. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? Ships, vehicles, weapons, robots. Katie looked up from her notes. They found records of humans naming their cars and talking to them. They found stories of soldiers mourning destroyed tanks. They found evidence that humans develop emotional attachment to machines and grieve when they are damaged or destroyed. The room was silent for a moment. Lisa spoke first. I don't see why that's scary. Because to them, it means we would fight for anything, Katie explained. Not just for territory or resources or survival. We would fight for things we love, even if those things are objects. Even if those things can't love us back. They can't predict what we might consider worth dying for. The Cathari elder, watching from his home world through a secure communication link, issued a formal statement to the conquered later that day. His message was brief but powerful. "Do not anger the humans," he said. "They do not fight the way we understand fighting. They chase their prey until it dies from exhaustion. They survive disasters that end civilizations. They display aggression while enjoying meals. They bond with their weapons and mourn them when they are lost. There is no reasoning with such beings. There is only coexistence." The statement spread across the galaxy in hours. It became the official position of the Concord's oldest species, and slowly the other members began to fall in line. The final session of the summit was unlike anything Daniel had expected. He had prepared for a quiet ending, a polite goodbye, perhaps some formal words about humanity being welcome to attend future events. Instead, the head of the Concord Council asked him to stand. "Ambassador Reyes," the council head said, her voice echoing through the Great Hall, "the Galactic Concord has reviewed humanity's participation in this summit. After careful consideration, we have reached a decision." Daniel held his breath. "Humanity is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Concord. You will have voting rights equal to any established species. Your territorial claims will be recognized and protected under galactic law. You will have a permanent seat on this council." The hall erupted in murmurs. Full membership was almost never granted to new species. It typically took centuries of observation and evaluation. Humanity had been known to the galaxy for less than a decade. Daniel stood frozen in shock. "I don't understand," he said honestly. "We came here as observers. We've caused nothing but problems since we arrived." The council head looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Ambassador, you have demonstrated qualities that the Concord values highly: endurance, determination, unpredictability." She paused. "We believe it is better to have humanity inside the Concord than outside it." Daniel heard the unspoken message clearly. They were afraid of what humanity might do if left alone. "We are honored to accept," he said carefully. "Humanity looks forward to peaceful cooperation with all members of the Concord." "Yes," the council head replied. "Peace. We look forward to that as well." As Daniel left the summit hall, Gorath was waiting for him. The Draxian warlord had recovered from the trial, though he moved more slowly than before. "Human," Gorath said, stepping into Daniel's path. "Warlord," Daniel replied, meeting his eyes without fear. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Gorath did something unexpected. He bowed his head, a gesture of respect among his people. "You earned my admiration in that chamber," Gorath said. "I have fought many enemies. I have killed many warriors, but I have never met anyone like you. Your body was failing, and still you stood. Why?" Daniel thought about the question carefully before answering. "Because I represent my people. Every human who ever lived. Every human who ever will live. I couldn't let them down." Gorath nodded slowly. "You would endure anything for those you have never met and those who are not yet born." "Yes." "This is what the council fears," Gorath said quietly. "This is why they gave you everything so quickly. They see a species that cannot be beaten because it will not stop. A species that turns pain into fuel and impossible odds into challenges." He stepped aside to let Daniel pass. "I hope our peoples remain allies, human. I would not want to face you as an enemy." 3 weeks later, Daniel was back on Earth, giving his report to the United Government. The room was full of officials and generals and scientists, all eager to hear what had happened at the summit. At the end of his presentation, one of the generals asked how humanity had achieved such an incredible diplomatic victory. Daniel thought about the laughing incident, the trial, the terror in alien eyes when he asked about the meeting schedule while still bleeding from electrical burns. "We just showed up and tried to be friendly," he said. The room nodded, satisfied with the simple explanation. Somewhere in the galaxy, Gorath watched a recording of the press conference. He saw Daniel shrug casually, as if nothing remarkable had happened. He saw humans laugh at a joke one of the reporters made. The warlord who had never known fear felt a shiver run down his spine. The humans didn't even realize what they were, and that, Gorath thought, was the most terrifying thing of all.